Captain Jake Martinez stared at the massive ship on his screen. It was bigger than anything he had ever seen. The alien vessel hung in space like a metal mountain, dark and threatening against the stars. 3 smaller ships floated nearby, but even those were twice the size of his own corvette. "Sir, we're getting a message," said Lieutenant Amy Brooks from her station. Her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the fear underneath. "It's coming through on all frequencies." "Put it through," Jake ordered. He straightened in his captain's chair and looked at the main screen. The face that appeared was not human. It had blue-gray skin and 4 eyes that glowed with a cold light. When it spoke, the words came out in perfect English, though the voice sounded like metal scraping against stone. "Primitive species of the 3rd planet," the alien said. "I am Commander Vexthil of the Zephyrian Empire. Your world now belongs to us. Send your leaders to surrender, or we will destroy your cities one by one." Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was small, only 12 people on the Corvette Defiant. Next to him floated 2 other corvettes, the Swift and the Guardian, and 1 frigate called the Ranger. 4 ships total. Not much against what looked like a small fleet. "Sir," whispered his weapons officer, Lieutenant Tony Rivera, "their shields are up and their weapons are charging." Jake nodded. He had been expecting this day for years. Earth's military leaders had always known that someday aliens might come. That's why they had patrol ships like his, watching the edges of the solar system. That's why they had protocols. "Open a channel," Jake said. Commander Vexthil's face appeared again on the screen. "You will surrender now, or no," Jake said simply. "We won't." The alien's 4 eyes widened. "You refuse? Your tiny ships against our dreadnought? You are either very brave or very stupid." "Maybe both," Jake said with a slight smile. "But here's the thing. We're not your enemy's main force. We're just the guys who watch the door." Vexthil laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Your main force? This is amusing. We have studied your world from afar. These 4 ships are the largest military vessels you possess. Your technology is centuries behind ours." Jake activated his comm system to speak to the other ships. "Swift, Guardian, Ranger. Pattern 7 is now active. Remember your training." "What is Pattern 7? Vexthil demanded. "You'll find out," Jake said. "Amy, cut the channel." The alien's face disappeared from the screen. Jake turned to his crew. "Everyone knows what to do. We're not here to win this fight. We're here to learn how they fight, and to buy time for the real response." Lieutenant Brooks looked confused. "Sir, what do you mean?" "We are Earth's Space Navy." Jake shook his head. "Amy, we're Earth's early warning system. The real Navy is back. Home, and they're a lot bigger than what you see here." Before Amy could ask more questions, the enemy ships opened fire. Beams of red energy shot across space toward the human ships. Jake gripped his chair as the Defiant shook under the impact. "Shields down to 60%, reported the engineering officer. "Return fire," Jake ordered. "Tony, remember what we learned in training. Their shields pulse every few seconds. Time your shots for the gaps." The human ships spread out and began their attack. They moved differently than the aliens expected. Instead of flying in straight lines, they twisted and turned through space like dancers. Tony's weapons found the gaps in the enemy shields, and small explosions bloomed along the side of the alien dreadnought. "Impossible," came Vexthil's voice. "Over the comm. Your weapons should not be able to penetrate our defenses." "We're full of surprises," Jake replied. "Pattern 7, Phase 2. All ships target their sensor arrays." The 4 human ships suddenly changed direction and speed. They moved in ways that seemed random, but Jake knew better. They had practiced this many times. The Swift dropped below the enemy formation while the Guardian went high. The Ranger came in from the side, and the Defiant charged straight forward. The aliens tried to track all 4 ships, but seemed confused by their movements. Human ships didn't follow the normal rules of space combat. They used their smaller size and speed to stay ahead of the enemy weapons. For 10 minutes, the battle continued. The human ships scored hit after hit on the alien vessels. They damaged sensors, weapon systems, and shield generators. But Jake knew they couldn't win. The enemy ships were too big and too strong. "Sir," Tony called out, "the Guardian is in trouble. Her engines are failing." Jake watched as the Guardian fell behind, smoke pouring from her rear section. The alien ships focused their fire on her, and she exploded in a ball of flame. "Ranger is hit too," Amy reported. "They're losing air." Jake made his decision. "All ships, final phase. Get close to their hull and take as much data as you can. We need to know how their armor works, how their weapons cycle, everything." The 3 remaining human ships dove toward the enemy dreadnought. They flew so close that the alien weapons couldn't track them properly. Jake's crew worked frantically, scanning everything they could. "Got it," said the science officer. "I'm reading their shield frequency, their weapon power levels, even their hull composition." "Good," Jake said. "Now transmit everything back to Earth Command. Use the emergency beacon." The Defiant shuddered as more enemy fire hit her. The Swift disappeared in another explosion. The Ranger drifted away, her crew dead. "Sir," Amy said. "We're the last one left." Jake nodded. "Then it's time to send our message." He opened a channel to Earth Command. "This is Captain Martinez of the Defiant. Pattern 7 is complete. We have all the data you need. Send the real fleet." The alien weapons finally found their mark. The Defiant's hull cracked open, and the ship began to break apart. But Jake's message was already traveling through space, back to Earth, back to the people who were waiting for this moment. As the Corvette died around him, Jake smiled. The aliens thought they had won. They thought these 4 ships were all Earth. Had to offer. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Admiral Kethmer stood in his command center, watching the debris from the human ships float in space. The battle was over. 4 small vessels had dared to challenge the might of the Zephyrian Empire, and now they were nothing but twisted metal and scattered atoms. "A pathetic display," he said to his officers. "These humans are even weaker than our scouts reported." Commander Vexthal appeared on the communication screen, his 4 eyes glowing with satisfaction. "The human fleet has been completely destroyed, Admiral. Their largest warships could barely damage our shields." "Excellent," Kethmer replied. "Begin the occupation protocols. Land troops in their major cities. I want this planet under our control within 1 day." "What about their military bases?" asked Colonel Zektar, the ground forces commander. "What military bases?" Kethmer laughed. "We just destroyed their entire space fleet, 4 tiny ships. These humans have no real military to speak of. The Zephyrian ships moved toward Earth like a dark cloud. Their landing craft dropped through the atmosphere, heading for the biggest cities. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow. All would soon fly the flag of the Empire. In the ruins of the Defiant, Lieutenant Amy Brooks floated in her emergency suit. She had been lucky. When the ship broke apart, she had been thrown clear in an escape pod. Now she drifted in space, watching the alien ships head toward her home world. Her radio crackled. "Human survivor, this is Rescue Ship 7. We are bringing you aboard." Amy found herself pulled into the belly of a Zephyrian vessel. The gravity was stronger than on Earth, and the air smelled like metal and ozone. Alien soldiers surrounded her, their weapons pointed at her chest. "Take her to the interrogation chamber," ordered a voice. "We need to learn about their military structure." Amy was pushed through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The walls were covered with strange symbols, and the lights hurt her eyes. Finally, she was brought to a small room with a single chair and a table. Commander Vexthil entered the room, his tall form casting a shadow over Amy. "Sit," he commanded. Amy sat down, trying to look calm even though her heart was racing. She had been trained for this moment, but training and reality were very different things. "You fought bravely," Vexthil said, "but your resistance is over. We have conquered your world with minimal effort." "Conquered?" Amy asked, genuinely confused. "You beat 4 patrol ships. That's not conquest." Vexthil's eyes narrowed. "Patrol ships? Those were your largest military vessels. Our sensors confirmed it." Amy stared at him. "You think the Defiant and her group were our main fleet?" "Of course they were," Vexthil said. "We studied your world for months before we attacked. Those 4 ships were the only significant military presence you had." Amy couldn't help herself. She started to laugh. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone who knew a terrible joke that others didn't understand. "What amuses you?" Vexthil demanded. "You really don't know, do you?" Amy said, "Those weren't warships. They were scouts. Border Patrol. The guys who watch for trouble and report back home." "Impossible," Vexthil said. "Your Captain Martinez called them your fleet." "He called them patrol ships," Amy corrected. "There's a difference." Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, the Zephyrian occupation was beginning. Their transport ships landed in Central Park, on the National Mall, in Red Square. Thousands of alien soldiers poured out, expecting to face desperate human resistance. Instead, they found something strange. The humans didn't seem terrified. They weren't running in panic. They were watching, taking pictures, and talking quietly. Among themselves, Colonel Pete Johnson stood on a rooftop in Washington, D.C., watching the alien soldiers march through the streets below. He was 45 years old, a veteran of several small wars, and he had been preparing for this day for 15 years. "Sir," said his radio operator, "Earth Command is asking for your status report." "Tell them the fish have taken the bait," Pete replied. "The aliens are spreading their forces thin, just like we hoped they would." Pete's job was simple. He commanded the Earth Resistance Network, a group of soldiers and civilians who had been training in secret for years. Their job was not to fight the aliens directly. Their job was to watch, learn, and gather information. "How many troops do you count?" Pete asked his spotter. "Maybe 10,000 in the whole city," the spotter replied. "That's not very many for a city of 8 million people." Pete nodded. "They're not expecting real resistance. They think they've already won." In other cities around the world, the same scene was playing out. As Zephyrian forces were taking control of government buildings, airports, and communication centers. But they were doing it with surprisingly small numbers of troops. Back in space, Admiral Kethmer was pleased with the progress. "Excellent work. Colonel Zektar, the planet, is under our control with minimal losses. The humans are not resisting," Zektar reported. "They seem to understand that fighting is useless." "Good," Kethmer said. "Catalog this world as species 7341. Minimal threat level conquered. We can move most of our fleet to the next target." "What? About the garrison force?" asked Commander Vexthil. "Leave 2 cruisers and a few thousand troops," Kethmer replied. "That should be more than enough to handle any problems." As the main Zephyrian fleet prepared to leave Earth orbit, Amy Brooks was still being questioned in her cell. She had been telling the truth about the patrol ships, but the aliens didn't believe her. "You continue to lie," Vexthil said. "If you had a larger fleet, where is it? Why hasn't it come to save you?" Amy looked up at him with tired eyes. "Because they're not ready yet. Earth doesn't rush into fights. We prepare. We plan. We make. Sure, we're ready before we act. More lies, Vexthel said. We have conquered hundreds of worlds. We know how species react to invasion. You would have sent everything you had to defend your home world, would we? Amy asked. How many species? Have you fought that came from death worlds? Death worlds? Vexthel seemed puzzled. Planets where everything tries to kill you, Amy explained. Where the weather can freeze you solid or burn you alive. Where the animals hunt in packs and the plants are poisonous. Where survival depends on working together and thinking ahead. Vexthel was quiet for a moment. Your world is not a death world. We scanned it. It has a pleasant climate and abundant resources. Amy smiled sadly. Then you haven't been paying attention. Earth is the ultimate death world. It's just good at hiding it. On the surface of Earth, Colonel Pete Johnson was making his own preparations. The aliens had been on the planet for 3 days now, and they were starting to relax. They had set up checkpoints and patrols, but they weren't expecting trouble. Sir, said his communications officer, we're getting reports from resistance. Cells all over the world. The aliens are following predictable patterns. They're not adapting to local conditions. They're treating us like every other species they've conquered, Pete replied. They don't understand that humans are different. Pete looked out at the alien patrol walking down the street below. They moved in perfect formation, their weapons ready but not aimed. They were professional soldiers, but they were used to fighting. Enemies who thought like them. Pass the word to all cells, Pete ordered. Continue observation and intelligence gathering. Do not engage unless directly threatened. We need to know everything about their weapons, their tactics, their supply lines. Sir, the communications officer said, when do we start fighting? Back? Pete smiled. We don't. That's not our job. Our job is to be ready when the real military arrives. The real military? The officer asked. Son, Pete said, did you really think that Earth's entire space navy consisted of 4 patrol boats? High above the Earth, the Zephyrian occupation force settled into their routine. They had conquered another world with minimal effort. Soon, the main fleet would move on to the next target, leaving only a small garrison to keep the humans under. Control. They had no idea that their easy victory was about to become their worst nightmare. 6 months had passed since the Zephyrian Empire had conquered Earth. The alien occupation force had settled into a comfortable routine. They controlled the major cities, the government buildings, and the communication networks. The humans seemed to accept their new rulers without much trouble. Admiral Kethmer had long since moved on to other conquests, taking most of the fleet with him. He left behind only 2 cruisers and 5,000 troops to keep Earth under control. It seemed like more than enough. Commander Vexthel now served as the military governor of Earth. He spent his days in his command center in New York, reading reports and managing the occupation. The humans were quiet, almost too quiet. They went to work, followed the new rules, and caused no major problems. But something bothered him. The human prisoner, Amy Brooks, had been right about one thing. Earth was different from other worlds the Empire had conquered. The humans didn't act like a defeated species. They watched everything, remembered everything, and asked strange questions. Sir, said his aide, we have another report from the science team. Vexthel took the datapad and read it. The human scientists had been surprisingly helpful in sharing their technology. They had given the Zephyrians detailed information about their computers, their vehicles, and their communication systems. But when the aliens asked about military technology, the humans claimed they had none. They keep saying they have no weapons research, Vexthel muttered. No advanced ships, no powerful weapons. But something doesn't add up. Meanwhile, in a secret facility buried deep under the Rocky Mountains, Admiral Lisa Chong was very busy. She stood in the command center of the Seoul Defense Force, looking at screens that showed the biggest military buildup in human history. "Status report," she said to her staff. 500 heavy cruisers are ready for deployment, reported Captain Tony Rivera, who had been promoted after his heroic service on the Defiant. "The shipyards are working around the clock." "What about the battleships?" Lisa asked. 50 battleships are complete," said another officer. "The new armor plating is installed, and the weapon systems are online." Lisa nodded. "And the Vengeance?" "The Dreadnought is ready, Admiral," Tony replied. "She's twice the size of anything the aliens have, and her weapons are based on the data Captain Martinez sent us." Lisa walked to the main display screen, which showed the entire solar system. Red dots marked the positions of Zephyrian ships. Blue dots showed human vessels, but there were many more blue dots than red ones. "The aliens think they're facing a primitive species," Lisa said. "They have no idea that we've been preparing for this war for 50 years. The truth was that Earth's military had been built in secret. While the aliens saw only a peaceful world with basic technology, the reality was very different. Hidden shipyards in asteroid belts had been building warships for decades. Secret bases on the Moon, Mars, and the outer planets had been training crews and developing weapons. Dr. Kevin White worked in his laboratory, studying pieces of the alien ships that had been destroyed in the first battle. He was a small man, with thick glasses, but his mind was sharp as a blade. "Fascinating," he said to his assistant. "Their shield technology is actually quite simple. It uses a rotating frequency pattern that changes every few seconds." "Can we beat it?" asked his assistant. Kevin smiled. "Beat it? We can do better than that. We can turn it against them." Kevin had been working on the problem for months. The aliens thought their shields were impenetrable, but human scientists had found a way to disrupt them. Better yet, they had found a way to make the aliens' own weapons turn against them. "Test the new frequency disruptor," Kevin ordered. In the test chamber, a piece of Zephyrian armor was subjected to a beam of energy. The armor's shields flickered and failed. Then the beam reflected off the armor and struck a target behind it. "Perfect," Kevin said. "Their own shields will become weapons against them." On Earth's surface, Colonel Pete Johnson was coordinating the resistance network. His job had changed over the months. At first, he had been gathering intelligence about the alien occupation. Now he was preparing for the liberation. "Sir," said his radio operator, "we have reports from cells in over 200 cities. The aliens are following the same patterns everywhere." Pete looked at the map on his table. It showed the locations of every Zephyrian base, every patrol route, every communication center. The aliens had no idea how closely they were being watched. "They're treating us like every other species they've conquered," Pete said. "They don't understand that humans are different." The resistance cells had been busy. They had mapped every alien installation, identified every weakness, and prepared detailed plans for when the real fighting began. But they had done it all without firing a single shot. "Sir," the radio operator said, "Earth Command is asking for a final status report." Pete smiled. "Tell them the aliens are exactly where we want them. They're spread thin, they're overconfident, and they have no idea what's coming." In her cell aboard the Zephyrian command ship, Amy Brooks was still being questioned. But the tone of the questions had changed. Commander Vexthal was beginning to have doubts about his easy victory. "Your people are too calm," he said to Amy. "Conquered species show fear, anger, desperation. Your people show none of these things." "Maybe because we're not conquered," Amy replied. "You are defeated," Vexthal insisted. "We destroyed your fleet. We control your planet." Amy looked at him with something like pity. "You destroyed 4 patrol boats, and you don't control anything?" You're just sitting in a few buildings while we decide what to do with you. What to do with us? Vexthul laughed. You are prisoners on your own world. Are we? Amy asked. When was the last time you left your command center? When was the last time you flew freely through space without worrying about what might be watching you? Vexthul was quiet. It was true that his forces had become cautious. They stayed close to their bases, flew predictable routes, and avoided the outer parts of the solar system. But that was just good military practice. You're trying to make us paranoid, he said. I'm trying to make you understand, Amy replied. You came to Earth thinking you were conquering a primitive world. But Earth isn't primitive. Earth is patient. In the outer solar system, beyond the orbit of Pluto, Admiral Lisa Chong's fleet was gathering. Ship after ship emerged from hidden bases, their crews eager for battle. The Zephyrians had never ventured this far from Earth, so they had no idea what was waiting for them. Admiral, said Captain Tony Rivera, all ships are reporting ready for deployment. Lisa looked at the massive fleet arrayed before her. 500 heavy cruisers, each one larger and more powerful than anything the aliens had seen. 50 battleships, bristling with weapons that could destroy entire enemy fleets. And at the center of it all, the dreadnought Vengeance, a ship, so large it had its own gravity field. How long since the aliens invaded? Lisa asked. 6 months, 12 days, Tony replied. Good, Lisa said. We've given them enough time to get comfortable. Now it's time to show them what Earth's real military looks like. The fleet began to move toward the inner system. They traveled slowly, staying hidden behind planets and asteroids. The aliens would have no warning until it was too late. On Earth, Commander Vexthul was reviewing the latest reports when his communications officer called out in alarm. Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures in the outer system. Vexthul rushed to the sensor station. What kind of energy signatures? Unknown, sir. But they're big, really big. Vexthul stared at the display. Whatever was out there, it was much larger than anything his sensors had ever detected. Could it be a natural phenomenon? No, sir, the officer replied. The signatures are artificial, and they're moving toward us. For the first time since the invasion began, Vexthul felt a chill of fear. Send a message to Admiral Kethmer. Tell him we may need reinforcements. Sir, the communications officer said, the Admiral is 3 systems away. It would take months for help to arrive. Vexthul looked at the screen again. The energy signatures were getting stronger, which meant they were getting closer. He had a feeling that help from the Admiral might not arrive in time. Bring the fleet to full alert, he ordered, and prepare for battle. He didn't know it yet, but the real war was about to begin. The alarms were screaming throughout the Zephyrian command ship. Commander Vexthul stood in his control center, staring at displays that showed something impossible. The energy signatures from the outer system were not just big, they were massive, beyond anything his people had ever seen. Sir, his sensor officer called out, we're getting clearer readings now. There are hundreds of ships out there. Hundreds? Vexthul couldn't believe it. That's impossible. We destroyed the human fleet months ago. Sir, these are not the same ships. These are much larger, much more powerful. Vexthul activated the emergency communication system. All units, this is Commander Vexthul. We are facing an unknown threat. Prepare for battle. The 2 Zephyrian cruisers in Earth orbit began powering up their weapons. The garrison forces on the ground were put on high alert. But Vexthul had a sinking feeling that his small force would not be enough in the outer system. Admiral Lisa Chong stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Vengeance. Around her, the largest fleet in human history was moving toward Earth. 500 heavy cruisers, 50 battleships, and dozens of support ships. The aliens were about to learn what Earth's real military looked like. "Admiral," said Captain Tony Rivara, "long-range sensors show the enemy is preparing to fight." "Good," Lisa replied. "Let them see us coming. I want them to understand exactly what they're facing." The human fleet moved with deadly precision. Each ship knew its role. Each captain understood the plan. They had been preparing for this moment for decades, and now it was finally here. Dr. Kevin White was aboard the cruiser Liberty, checking his special weapons one last time. His frequency disruptors were installed on every human ship, ready to turn the aliens' own shields against them. "Dr. White," said Captain Rivera, "are you sure these devices will work?" Kevin adjusted his glasses and smiled. "Captain, I've been studying their technology for 6 months. Their shields operate on a simple rotating frequency. My disruptors will not only penetrate their shields, they'll cause their own weapons to malfunction." On Earth, Colonel Pete Johnson was watching the alien garrison scramble to prepare for battle. The Zephyrians were moving troops, setting up defensive positions, and trying to coordinate with their ships in orbit. "Sir," said his communications officer, "all resistance cells are reporting that the aliens are in full panic mode." Pete nodded. They finally realized they might be in trouble. "Pass the word to all cells. Stay out of the way and let our fleet handle this." "Sir," the officer said, "shouldn't we attack the aliens from behind while they're distracted?" "No," Pete replied. "This isn't our fight anymore. We did our job by gathering intelligence. Now it's time for the real military to take over." In space, the human fleet was approaching the inner system. Admiral Lisa Chong could see Earth on her main screen, the blue and green world that was her home. The planet was occupied by aliens who thought they had won an easy victory. "Admiral," Tony reported, "the enemy cruisers are moving to intercept us." Lisa looked at the tactical display. 2 alien cruisers against her entire fleet. The odds were so one-sided that it would have been funny if it wasn't so deadly serious. "Open a channel to the alien commander," Lisa ordered. Commander Vexthel's face appeared on the screen. His 4 eyes were wide with shock and fear. "Who are you? Where did you come from?" "I am Admiral Lisa Chong of the Earth Defense Force," she replied, "and I'm here to take back my planet." "This is impossible," Vexthel said. "We destroyed your fleet. We conquered your world." "You destroyed 4 patrol boats," Lisa said calmly, "and you occupied some of our cities. But you never conquered Earth. You just made us angry." Vexthel looked at the massive fleet on his sensors. "How many ships do you have?" "Enough," Lisa replied. "Commander, you have one chance to surrender. Leave Earth orbit immediately, release all prisoners, and return to your own space. Do this, and I will let you live." "You're bluffing," Vexthel said. "No species can hide a fleet this large." "We didn't hide it," Lisa said. "We built it. After you attacked our patrol ships, we had 6 months to prepare. We used that time well." Vexthel cut the communication and turned to his officers. "All ships, attack formation. We cannot let them reach Earth." The 2 Zephyrian cruisers accelerated toward the human fleet, their weapons charged, their shields at maximum power. They were brave, but they were facing impossible odds. Admiral Lisa Chong watched the enemy ships approach. "All ships, this is Admiral Chong. Engage the enemy. Let's show them what happens when you attack Earth." The human fleet opened fire. Hundreds of weapons beams crossed space, striking the alien cruisers. But instead of bouncing off their shields, the beams penetrated effortlessly. Dr. White's frequency disruptors were working perfectly. "Impossible," Vexthel shouted as his ship shook under the bombardment. "Our shields should be stopping those weapons." His science officer was frantically checking the readings. "Sir, our shields are malfunctioning. They're not just failing. They're reflecting our own weapons back at us. One of the Zephyrian cruisers exploded as its own weapon systems overloaded. The other cruiser, Vexthul's command ship, was severely damaged and drifting helplessly. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we're getting a message from the surface. The garrison is requesting permission to surrender." Vexthul looked at his tactical display. The human fleet was surrounding his damaged ship, and more ships were heading toward Earth. He had never seen such a large and powerful force. "How?" he whispered. "How did a primitive species build such a fleet?" Admiral Lisa Chong's voice came over the communication system. "Commander Vexthul, your ship is disabled and your garrison is surrounded. Will you surrender?" Vexthul looked around his damaged bridge. Half his crew was dead or injured, and the ship was losing power. "You said you built this fleet after we attacked. How is that possible?" "Commander," Lisa said, "Earth has been preparing for this day for 50 years. We knew that someday aliens would come to our world. We just didn't know when or where they would come from." 50 years? Vexthul was stunned. "But we studied your world. We saw no signs of military preparation." "That's because we're good at keeping secrets," Lisa replied. "We built our shipyards in hidden locations. We trained our crews in secret bases. We developed our weapons in underground laboratories. And we waited." "Waited for what?" "For someone like you to attack us," Lisa said. "We knew we couldn't defend against every possible threat, so we prepared to respond to any threat. You gave us the excuse we needed to reveal our true capabilities." Captain Tony Rivera was listening to the conversation from his position on the bridge. He thought about Captain Martinez and the crew of the Defiant, who had died to gather the intelligence that made this victory possible. "Admiral," he said, "we're receiving surrender signals from all alien ground forces." Lisa nodded. "Accept their surrender and prepare boarding parties for the enemy ships. We have some prisoners to rescue." On Earth, Colonel Pete Johnson was watching alien soldiers lay down their weapons. The occupation was over, and it had ended without a single shot being fired by the resistance. "Sir," his communications officer said, "Admiral Chong is asking for a complete report on alien positions and capabilities." Pete smiled. "Tell the Admiral that we have detailed intelligence on every enemy unit, every weapon system, and every piece of technology they brought to Earth. My people have been very thorough." In her cell, Amy Brooks heard the sound of human voices in the corridor. The door opened, and she saw Captain Tony Rivera with a squad of Earth Defense Force Marines. "Lieutenant Brooks," Tony said, "you're free to go." Amy stood up, hardly believing it was over. "Captain Rivera? But I thought you were killed on the Defiant." "I was lucky," Tony replied. "But more importantly, Captain Martinez's sacrifice wasn't in vain. The data you and the other crews gathered made this victory possible." As Amy was escorted to safety, she passed Commander Vexthul, being taken to detention. The alien commander looked broken and confused. "How?" he asked her as they passed. "How did your species hide such power?" Amy looked at him with something like pity. "We didn't hide it. We built it. That's what humans do when you threaten our home." Admiral Lisa Chong stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, looking down at Earth. The planet was free. The alien occupation was over, and the human fleet had won a complete victory without losing a single ship. "Admiral," Tony reported, "we're receiving a message from the Zephyrian home fleet. Admiral Kethmer is demanding an explanation." Lisa smiled. "Put him through. It's time to explain a few things to the Zephyrian Empire." The liberation of Earth was complete, but the real message was just beginning to spread across the galaxy. Admiral Kethmer stared at the communication screen in disbelief. The message from Earth made no sense. His occupation force had been defeated by a massive human fleet that appeared from nowhere. Commander Vexthul was a prisoner, and the entire garrison had surrendered without firing a shot. "This is impossible," he said to his bridge crew. "We destroyed their fleet months ago. 4 small ships were all they had." "Sir," said his communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." The screen changed to show a human woman in a military uniform. She looked calm and confident, not like someone from a conquered world. "I am Admiral Lisa Chong of the Earth Defense Force," she said. "You must be Admiral Kethmer. We need to talk." Kethmer activated his own transmitter. "What have you done with my forces?" "Your forces have surrendered," Lisa replied. "They are being treated according to the laws of war. No one has been harmed." "Impossible," Kethmer said. "How did you defeat them? Where did your fleet come from?" Lisa smiled. "Admiral, I think you misunderstood what happened when you first attacked Earth. You didn't defeat our fleet. You defeated our border patrol." "Border patrol?" Kethmer's voice rose. "Those were warships. Those were corvettes and a frigate." Lisa corrected. "The smallest ships in our fleet. Their job was to watch for threats and report back to us." Kethmer looked at his tactical displays. His sensors were showing hundreds of human ships in Earth orbit, ships larger and more powerful than anything the Zephyrian Empire had ever built. "How many ships do you have?" he asked. "Enough," Lisa replied. "Admiral, your empire has made serious mistake. You attacked our home without understanding what you were facing." "We studied your world for months," Kethmer protested. "We saw no signs of advanced military technology." "That's because we're very good at keeping secrets," Lisa said. "Earth has been preparing for this day for 50 years. We knew that someday aliens would find us. We just didn't know when." On the bridge of the Vengeance, Captain Tony Rivera was listening to the conversation. He had survived the destruction of the Defiant and lived to see Earth's revenge. But it wasn't really revenge. It was justice. "Admiral," he said quietly, "we're receiving reports from our scouts. The Zephyrian home fleet is still 3 systems away." Lisa nodded. "Good. That gives us time to make our point." She turned back to the communication screen. "Admiral Kethmer, I want you to understand something. The 4 ships you destroyed were not our military. They were our early warning system. Captain Martinez and his crews died to gather intelligence about your weapons and tactics." "Intelligence?" Kethmer asked. "Every shot you fired, every maneuver you made, every weakness you showed, we recorded it all. Then we spent 6 months preparing to face you. Dr. Kevin White was working at his station on the cruiser Liberty, monitoring the alien technology they had captured. The frequency disruptors had worked perfectly, but he was already thinking about improvements. "Captain Rivera," he said over the cone, "the alien shield technology is actually quite interesting. With some modifications, we could use it to improve our own defenses." "Dr. White," Tony replied, "I think we've already proven that human technology is superior." "Superior?" Kevin laughed. "Captain, we're not superior. We're just different. The aliens build their technology to work the same way every time. We build our technology to adapt and change." On Earth, Colonel Pete Johnson was overseeing the processing of alien prisoners. The Zephyrian soldiers were confused and demoralized. They had expected to face a primitive species, not advanced military force. "Sir," said his aide, "the alien prisoners keep asking the same question." "What question?" Pete asked. "They want to know how we hid such a large fleet. They can't understand how they missed it." Pete smiled. "Tell them we didn't hide it. We built it after they attacked. That's what humans do when you threaten our home." Back in space, Admiral Kethmer was trying to make sense of what he was seeing. His tactical officers were analyzing the human fleet, and the numbers were staggering. "Sir," his science officer reported, "we're detecting over 500 heavy cruisers, 50 battleships, and one ship that's larger than anything in our database. How is that possible? Kethmer demanded. No species can build such a fleet. In 6 months. Admiral Lisa Chong's voice came over the comm again. Admiral, you're thinking about this wrong. We didn't build this fleet in 6 months. We built it over 50 years. When you attacked our patrol ships, we just decided it was time to reveal it. 50 years? Kethmer was stunned. But why? You had no enemies. We had no enemies that we knew of, Lisa corrected. But we knew that the galaxy was full of other species. We knew that someday someone would find Earth. We wanted to be ready. Ready for what? Ready for anything, Lisa said. Admiral, let me explain something about humans. We don't just react to threats. We prepare for them. We plan for them. We build entire civilizations around the idea that someday we might need to defend ourselves. Captain Tony Rivera was studying the tactical displays, watching the Zephyrian fleet's movements. They were staying at a safe distance, clearly afraid to attack. Admiral, he said, I think they're beginning to understand. Lisa nodded. Good. It's time to make our terms clear. She opened a channel to Admiral Kethmer. Admiral, here's what's going to happen. You're going to withdraw all Zephyrian forces from human space. You're going to return to your own territory and never come back. And if we refuse? Kethmer asked. Then you'll find out what happens when you make humans angry, Lisa replied. Right now, you're just facing our defensive fleet. If you force use to go on the offensive, you'll discover that we have weapons you've never imagined. Kethmer looked at his officers. They were all staring at the tactical displays, trying to understand how they had made such a massive mistake. Sir, his aide whispered, perhaps we should contact the Emperor. The Emperor? Kethmer laughed bitterly. What am I going to tell them? That we attacked a species we thought was primitive, and they turned out to have the most powerful fleet. In the galaxy? Amy Brooks was now aboard the Vengeance, having been rescued from the alien prison ship. She stood next to Admiral Chong, watching the conversation with Admiral Kethmer. Admiral, she said, may I say something? Lisa nodded. Go. Ahead, Lieutenant. Amy activated the comm. Admiral Kethmer, this is Lieutenant Amy Brooks. You interrogated me for 6 months. I remember you, Kethmer said. You kept insisting that we hadn't defeated your main fleet. That's right, Amy said. I tried to warn you. I tried to tell you that Earth was different, but you wouldn't listen. You were lying, Kethmer accused. I was trying to save your life, Amy replied. Admiral, you came to Earth thinking you were conquering a primitive world. But Earth isn't primitive. Earth is patient. We don't rush into fights. We prepare for them. Admiral Lisa Chong stepped forward. Admiral Kethmer, you have a choice to make. You can withdraw your forces and return to your own space, and we'll consider this matter closed. Or you can try to fight us and learn why humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Kethmer looked at his tactical displays one more time. The human fleet was massive, advanced, and clearly ready for battle. His own forces were outnumbered 10-1, and he was light years away from reinforcements. We withdraw, he said. Finally. But the Emperor will want to know about this. Good, Lisa said. Make sure you tell him everything. Tell him that Earth is not a primitive world. Tell him that humans are not a weak species. And tell him that if the Zephyrian Empire ever threatens Earth again, we'll be ready. The communication ended, and Admiral Kethmer began the humiliating process of withdrawing his forces. The great Zephyrian Empire, which had conquered hundreds of worlds, was retreating from a single planet. On Earth, the celebrations were beginning. The occupation was over, the aliens were leaving, and the planet was free. But the real victory was not just military. It was the message that Earth had sent to the galaxy. Admiral Lisa Chong stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, watching the last Zephyrian ships disappear into hyperspace. Captain Tony Rivera joined her at the observation deck. "Admiral," he said, "what happens now?" Lisa smiled. "Now we get ready for the next threat." "Because there will be a next threat. The galaxy is full of species like the Zephyrians, and they all think they can conquer whoever they want. And when they come?" Tony asked. "When they come, they'll find out the same thing Admiral Kethmer learned today," Lisa replied. "Earth doesn't just defend itself. Earth prepares itself. And we've been preparing for this day for 50 years. Dr. Kevin White was already working on new technologies based on what they had learned from the Zephyrians. Colonel Pete Johnson was expanding the resistance network to cover other worlds. And throughout the solar system, hidden shipyards were beginning work on even larger and more powerful vessels. The Zephyrian Empire had learned a hard lesson about humans. But they were not the only species in the galaxy. Soon word would spread about the strange species on the third planet of a small yellow star. A species that looked primitive, but was actually incredibly advanced. A species that seemed peaceful, but was actually the most dangerous military force anyone had ever encountered. And when the next aliens came to Earth, thinking they could conquer it easily, they would discover what the Zephyrians had learned. Humans don't just flee,